grew up feeling just like very invisible for a multitude of reasons. Like between my family viewing me as like the reincarnation of my great grandfather and like all the things attached to like being a grieving tool because I was.
Oh, yo. All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean. Keeping It a Bean is a podcast that brings together commentary and conversation all over a cup of coffee. But in tonight's case, tea. Yes, that's where the tea belongs. Taste and case. Okay, stop playing. If you are new here, my name is Marquise Davon, Keese, this American Negro. It is never Mark. You already know what it is. If you are returning, hello to niggas and niggas only. You already know what it is. Stop playing with him. Again, there are different ways that you can support this here podcast as well. You can do so one of two ways. If you want to support me monetarily, you can go to patreon.com/Marquise Davon. That's MarquiseDavon. There you can get early drops to videos and also any announcements that I may have as we go along. But then also, if you want me to speak somewhere, you can also support me there and say, hey, can you speak at this conference? Hey, can you do this workshop? I like to talk around topics around different social issues, particularly prison, abolition and reform, but then also thinking around how to challenge different systems, Black masculinity and education and SEL and all that good stuff. So if you're interested in hiring me for any speaking engagements, you can do so that way too. Outside of that, you can also support me non-monetarily because niggas is stressed. So you can do so by going to Twitter and using the hashtag KIAB or Keeping It a Bean so I can keep up with the conversation as well right over there. You know, I'm a man of the Twitter streets, so I'll be out there and in them streets. But also, if you're looking at these two very lovely faces here on the interwebs, that means you are watching us on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, then this is another opportunity to hit that like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell as well. So this way that we are fully engaged in this conversation and you are notified every Sunday at 10 a.m. when I drop a new episode. So please tap in with that over here. However, if I'm your Monday morning commute, because, you know, niggas still like audio first at the end of the day, you can also make sure that you're listening to me as well on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to leave a rate and review. Don't be a hater. Leave me 5 stars. Let me know what you enjoyed about these episodes. Why do you like my platform? All that good stuff. Because, you know, I need to see it. But also that helps me show up in the algorithm, also show up on like podcasts, but then also different playlists that would be happening as well. This is the easiest way to support podcasters as well. So please, 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 thank you. And don't forget to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend because word of mouth is still the most powerful form of marketing as well. So I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for rocking with me. We're going to get started on this episode. Good, bro. Y'all, I am so excited. This man is a poet. He is a writer. He is an artist. He is an educator. He is doing all of the things. He is the man of wonderful hats, the man with the glasses and aesthetic to match. I ain't even gonna hold.
Okay, you got the bars.
Stop playing with him, okay?
Let's go.
Oh, man. But Enoch, welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you, man.
How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Come on, I'm excited. Dog, I ain't gonna hold. I've been looking forward to this interview for so long. I've been talking about your interview for the longest time.
Hey, that's gay. That's gay.
Nah, truly and honestly, like the conversation we had earlier this month, definitely if it sat with me in terms of just like, one, knowing more about your journey, but also just like years of interacting in different ways. Yeah. And then finally like sitting down and being like, nah, let's actually talk.
Yeah. Let's be homies.
Right, like actually friends. Like, nah, dog. So I've just been like honestly, truly like a fan of you. I've been following your work for a couple of years now because I think I met you. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
I think 2 years ago.
2 years ago now.
So,
Yeah. So officially meeting, I knew of you, and then I met you at a workshop I was doing here at Rec. Actually.
Oh, word.
Yeah. So I think it was like was it an open house?
It might have been.
Yeah. I was doing like a backwards design for creatives or something like that. Yeah, but we was chatting after that, and like I saw your stuff, and I was like, oh, this man is working.
He trying.
No, you be doing it. You be succeeding, okay? He's so humble. Dog, but seriously, like I'm so excited to have you on the show. I'm just excited, honestly, for like the conversation we can get into today because your talents, your ability as a storyteller, but also I think it's a story that is so compelling as well because you were such an interesting human. And
thank you.
yeah, no, seriously, like I quite literally mean every single word.
I appreciate
yeah, and so like that moment earlier this month is just sit down and be able to rap with you for a little bit and being able to like get to know you a lot more. I'm just like I already wanted you on the show, but like this just made it even easier and like even more seamless. So I'm excited for you to be here. But before we get into that full conversation and our audience really gets to know you, I'm gonna do a fun little icebreaker. Okay. You know, this is the Keeping It a Bean segment. So in this segment, Keeping a Bean, Keeping 100, this is your hot take on whatever. So this can be pop culture, it can be politics, it can be personal, what you reading, what you listening to, what you watching, whatever.
Oh man.
What are you keeping it a bean about today?
This is a loaded question for me because from peer review, most of the things you will hear me say about myself are things that other people have told me, right? Mm-hmm. I have a lot of hot takes, I guess, because I have strong feelings about shit.
That you do.
So I'm like, damn, what's the John I'm gonna cycle through? I think I'll go to a conversation I was having with a good poet homie earlier today. So I want to preface this with saying I am not saying that this dialogue or conversation doesn't exist somewhere or that this research doesn't exist somewhere. I'm just saying wherever it exists, it has not crossed my radar.
Right.
So I want to be clear about that, right?
This is a nigga with a theory.
I haven't, in like a lot of discussions that we have about black men, black masculinity, all of these things, and talking about the, pathology, lived experience of black men, one of the conversations I don't see enough is how we experience a very imbalanced amount of rejection on a regular basis that absolutely has an impact on the way in which we function socially.
Yes.
And a lot of times I feel like when we talk about how black men function socially, we talk about it in a vacuum.
Yes.
Right? Where it's just like, oh, we just show up and we just happen to be horrible niggas.
Yeah.
Not thinking about like there are a slew of experiences that develop this personality within a person. And I think rejection is a large part of that, especially because of like how we are conditioned to operate within our gender in general, right? So that's my thing. Y'all niggas need to talk more about rejection. Yeah.
Dog. No. All right. So I'm like producing an episode right now of just like, I feel bad for Drake fans.
Oh shit, say more.
Yeah, and it's just and here's your exclusive drop. But it is an episode where I'm just like, let me analyze those people who are like, Drake is my favorite artist, right? And then also thinking around like, what is the appeal of Drake? And for me, I'm like, at the core of it, it is niggas who have not dealt with rejection is like the core of it of just like, oh, like where has this unchecked rejection festered and how have we ignored it because of like the way that the world tells men it's emotional to feel rejection and like the feelings that come along with it. Like that is feeling of like, oh, I'm not good enough. It can bring up insecurities. It can bring up a time where you may have been rejected by somebody even close to you. But the world tells us, and the patriarchy is like, hey, actually, men, you need to be stoic. You shouldn't talk about your emotions. You shouldn't do this. On top of us being black men. And then you're not supposed to be naturally protectors as well. And so like taking the world of information that has told you you are supposed to be this stoic protector, you live in isolation, and this is what a man is supposed to be. But in reality, Drake stands. Aubrey's Angels is what I like to call them. Aubrey's Angels.
Got him. Damn.
But Aubrey's Angels are black men who particularly want to seek revenge because they have particularly experienced like unchecked rejection and did not know how to process it and didn't have community around them to process it and also speak life into themselves because the rest of the world projects on like black men are this. And if you look at media and how we should be showing up, oh, don't be too soft. Don't do this, man up, blah, 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 blah. We hear all of these things and they're conflicting things that we're experiencing. Like this is what the world is telling us, but this is what I'm actually feeling. Yeah. And like, how do you reckon like that in between. But that's why I'm like, Drake speaks to a very hurt kind of nigga who's dealt with rejection that has been unchecked, and he's too late into his 20s and 30s to really understand. But that's why people resonate with like Drake lyrics. It's just like, oh no, yeah, she definitely hurt me. I don't care. I'm gonna be toxic. I'm gonna get my revenge.
I say all the time, most people, and I think this is why the ghostwriting shit didn't matter, right? Because most niggas, and I would include myself in this, like, because I was a Drake fan to an extent.
Oh, okay.
No, to an extent.
I'm not one of them angels.
I'm not anybody's fanboy because I'm just like, all of these people are human, right? And I feel like fanboying is another level of like, just like dehumanization, because I'm putting you
on
past,
a pedestal.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like everyone can fuck up. I just like what you create.
Right.
But with Drake specifically, I always say like, niggas don't care about Drake not writing his lyrics because no one is listening to Drake for his authenticity. They're listening to Drake because they like the way they sound saying his lyrics. Right? I like the way it feels to say this shit you just said, so I don't give a fuck if you wrote it or not.
Yeah.
Because it's all about my visibility.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You know what?
Wow.
Yeah. That was two hot takes in one.
Bro, like, it be wild to me because we're all living like a very human experience. And I think specifically, like, when it comes to black men, because like some of us can be very like boisterous or like ego driven, we, I think, socially tend to think that we're visible. Right. So there is no visibility that needs to be lended.
Right.
But like the version of me that's visible is not actually me. So I'm actually still invisible. Right. Like I still need visibility. And the shit, as toxic and as vengeful as it may be, that Drake will say in a song, does lend to niggas' visibility. Right? Because it's like, yo, I can remember feeling that in a relationship.
Right.
And especially like, if we're thinking about niggas who have like people pleasing tendencies or like good guy syndrome, right? You're not gonna say none of that shit out loud, like in a regular conversation.
This is really how I feel, though.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so it lent to I would say like a invisible aspect of like men's lived experience, and because it's so scarce to a lot of niggas, it causes them to just lean in really heavy. And it's like, yo,
I'm leaning into my villain era.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And Drake should not be the spokesperson for any of this shit. But it's like, like at the end of the day, like the things do what they do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's, I'm very neutral about, not neutral, that's not the right word.
Indifferent.
I'm non-judgmental
Yeah.
about it because I think like the whole like whether it's good or bad doesn't change the fact that a thing is happening.
Right.
And like sometimes we get so wrapped up in that conversation that we actually don't remedy the issue.
Wow. Yeah. Because now we're only targeting the symptoms of everything. So we're just saying like, hey, here's the output, but actually like the real question we can have a little bit of empathy for Drake. The question we should ask is like, what happened to you? And let's unpack it.
Yeah.
Right.
And like we don't necessarily have to.
Right. Whoever's his circle is going to do that. Like, do you have niggas around you who actually give a fuck about you? No.
That's a whole other thing.
That's another conversation.
You know what I'm saying? You know? But yeah, it's always interesting to me like how we engage with activism, and like activism, is that the right word I want to use? That's the word I have right now that came to me. In like a very a la carte manner. Yeah. Right? Like we can understand that like, okay, let's not judge looters because that is a product of systemic oppression and scarcity of resources. But then we can engage with a person and it can function in a way, and it's like, oh, well, this person is just horrible. Yeah. And it's like, no, this is actually the same concept. Right. Right? Like this social looting that is occurring like of your time and resources is also a byproduct of some form of lived oppression. Right. You know what I'm saying? But
oh, dog, no, that's valid though, because you think around it and it's like, it's something different of like, critiquing systems and things absolves humanity a lot of the time, right? And so we kind of like look at it and shout out to my boy Mark. But we had this conversation probably a few months ago, maybe almost up to a year ago now. But like, what are the unintended consequences of pathologizing a black man's experience? right? And like if we are subscribing like this is every man's experience, then is there any way to do some of the individual work? Because it's not a one size fits all kind of approach, to be honest, right? So yeah, we can critique like patriarchy has forced us to think in these kinds of ways, but also me and you just in itself, like I ain't know shit about Wilmington. I ain't gonna hold y'all. Okay? I grew up in Reading, Pennsylvania, right? But like I would never have guessed, because in my mind I look at Delaware as like, oh, just like kind of like the weird cousin of the United States. Like everybody's there. I'm just like, y'all just a little different. But in reality though, like we experience the world in different ways. Like yes, as Black men we experience it one way, but like stature and size and how we talk and how we dress and how we communicate to the world economically, right?
Neurodivergence,
all of the things, right? And so it's like, how does that all kind of function in a space? But also our experiences are going to be different, because now I actually have to sit there and listen to like, well, what is your actual individual lived experience? Yeah. Because that's actually much more messy and takes more time to actually meet you where you need to be taken care of, right? Yeah. Our needs may be very different, even if we're both people pleasers. I'm a recovering people pleaser. Okay, I'm in my era of no longer doing it and saying no. So shout out to me. Okay,
and I'm a recovering self-abandoner, and those things are similar, right?
Wow,
they different but similar.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
I like. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I feel like with like a lot of the conversation that happens and a lot of the rhetoric, and I think it's stuff that is like continuously shifting as well. Yeah. We can be like really prescriptive with the social shit in a way that really gives whiteness to me. Oh, right? Yes. Like the same way we be like, a white person can't read all these books about structural oppression and then tell me my lived experience in the hood. That applies to everyone. Quite literally. Right? Like you can't read all these books about masculinity and tell me what my lived experience is like as a man, things, right? And I think like there can always be overlap, but also like every like toxic trait or non-beneficial trait that a nigga has is not necessarily always patriarchy either, right? Or necessarily always coming from another man, right? Because patriarchy is a system we all live inside of, right? Okay. Yeah.
Which it goes to like that point even more of like, not only is like the unintended consequence of pathologizing Black men's experiences can be like, oh, we no longer see each other as human, but it also it makes everybody struggle to view Black boys and Black men as victims of circumstance as well.
Yeah, and as human.
And as human.
Yeah.
Oh, dog.
Like we all unhumanized in some manner.
Yeah, because even like thinking around like being platformed, or even thinking around like you as an author, like what does that look like? People see you as, they see you as Enoch the poet, right? Like what does this like mean when people are interacting with you? And that's something KP and I were talking about on the previous episode of just like, yeah, like we have this platform, but also like my breath be funky in the morning. Don't talk to me first thing in the morning. I really ain't trying to fuck with y'all niggas for real, right? But when people see what we display out to the world, the parasocial relationships turn transactional a lot of the time. And so it's just like, no, I am here for you because I want you to help me escape. I want to hear you say something that will move me and have a catharsis in some way, versus like, oh, well, Marquise, like, I need your political view on this thing, or I need you to talk around this thing. I'll be like, nigga, no. Sometimes, honestly, the only thing that's been cried in my mind, and honestly, in sleep, this is just a side tangent. I had a dream. I had that Sukuna took over my body. Oh, and shit. Like I was on some side mission yesterday in my dream. So I woke up. I was just like, I've been watching too much Jujutsu Kaisen.
That's crazy,
dog. It was crazy. But I sat there. I was like, oh, I'm on a mission. I'm like jumping. I'm fighting. I'm like doing the things. And honestly, this normally only happens when I have Taco Bell. Like I have the most vivid dreams after Taco Bell. It's a correlation. Taco Bell causes like the most vivid dreams in me. I know we went from like a very hard switch.
That was a very hard switch. Yeah. I've never heard nobody say that before.
No,
I can't even eat that shit. So, you know what I'm saying?
Taco Bell gives me vivid dreams.
Which Taco Bell do you go to?
He's like, I'm trying to make sure I don't go to that
one. No, it's just a bunch. Like it's always happened though. Like I know I'm gonna have the most vivid dream whenever I have Taco Bell. And they are the most outlandish things. It's like the one dream I had, I was a ninja, and we were like Philly turned into Gotham, and I'm just shit. It was a whole situation. But you couldn't tell me nothing. And then somehow Gundam got in there too. I was like, what? How's this?
Oh, shout out to Gundam.
Oh, Haki.
They have some fire series.
They do.
Yeah.
But like full circle moment, when you guys were talking about dehumanizing, do you think people dehumanize Drake? Because I feel as though like when he first started out, his music was different. It was more like about his life and about the struggles, and he talked a lot about this stuff. But like nowadays, his music is sort of like always talking about women and leaning into the stuff that his most iconic songs
are misogynistic.
Yeah, and he kind of leads into that.
Because he's a villain now, right? Like, this is what the world wanted him to be, and this is who I'm going to be. And some of it is also like, I don't think. Okay, the further analysis of Drake to me is that Drake doesn't have an actual good sense of self. Like, he doesn't have a foundational sense of self. Like,
absolutely not.
Yeah, like Drake is always searching to like be.
That's why he be trying on different shit
every time. Like, you can say that, right?
Yeah. But do you think? Like also his fans like want that from Drake, like only see Drake in one picture or one tone and really can't see like him as a person.
I think being famous is to be dehumanized.
Yeah, like you're a product.
Yeah, like your goal is to produce material and meet the needs of the people who listen to you. I think, oddly enough, I think Drake and Kendrick are similar in the regard that they are viewed as a voice for something, and that automatically makes them an idea. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a lot of conversation around Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in different ways.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, this is human to me.
I thought it was honestly like a perfectly flawed album.
Yeah,
like,
and there was a bunch of shit I didn't agree with.
Yeah,
right. And at the same time, I'm like, this is only upsetting to you because you viewed this nigga as a specific type of person. Also, like, a lot of times we viewing these people as people they ain't even tell us that they was. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
clock it.
Drake never got up here and said, I'm here to speak for all hurt niggas. Niggas just appointed him as the president. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and then now it's like there is a livelihood and sustainability that is attached to maintaining the image that is prescribed to you, right? Because these people are using their artistry as a career. Like, I've had these struggles, right? Like, this is part of why I stopped slamming, because I'm like, I don't like what is being requested of me. Right. Would I have done that if it was higher stakes? Like, if I had people on payroll and shit, I don't know. To be honest. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a different level. So yeah, I definitely think I think fans of any person will dehumanize them in some degree.
Immediately, And I think it's something we struggle with, especially as content creators. It's funny, like, you brought that up the other day, you know, because niggas be journaling. Shout out to my therapist.
Gang.
Okay, we out here. Excuse me. Okay, that too.
You human.
Okay, bring it back. But I actually had this question of just like, all right, am I actually happy in the career that I'm in? Am I doing it because I'm good at it, or am I doing it because it's still in line with like my purpose and stuff? And I know Daniel used to be like, well, why don't you just do the other thing? Okay, and I'm just like, the other piece for me that I also thought about and what I journaled about recently is like, if I were to do this podcasting thing full time, how does that change my relationship to my audience? How does that change my relationship to the thing that I like to do?
Absolutely.
And then what does it mean to like navigate that space? Part of it is not knowing, and the other piece is like this thing you were actually talking around is like, oh no, now people are depending on me, right?
Yeah.
Like now I'm outputting at a higher consistency, and I'm focused on like, I need to make sure that my next check is coming because niggas ain't gonna be broke again, right?
Absolutely.
And so my relationship to the thing will naturally change, and I'm in the space of like, do I want to do this? And I know I do. Like that's the real answer. Don't yell at me. That's the real answer. And like, what does that mean? How do I reframe my relationship to the thing that I love?
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's been an interesting space to like live into.
Yeah. I feel that. I mean, when I first moved to Philly in 2017, I transitioned into doing like poetry full time, and I did that until I got this program director position last year.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's one of those things where it may not be forever. It may not even be for a whole year, but like, you never really gonna know how you feel about it until you do it. Like, one story that always sticks out to me, I was watching this Maxwell interview. This was years ago, and he was talking about, you know, when he came out with his first album, Urban Hang Suite, I believe, and he was on the cover of Vibe.
Yeah.
He was still a waiter at a diner in New York.
Wow.
Right? Like, so he's on Vibe. Everyone is listening to this nigga's music, and he's still busting tables.
Right.
Right? And the reason I always think about that is because it's like, there is no way I'm going to be able to avoid, like, being down bad.
Right.
Like, making a transition.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's, like, a thing. Right? Because you're shifting in a way that your current resources have not allotted for.
Right.
And you could do a bunch of planning and shit, but like also like it's always gonna be some shit that come up that you don't expect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so you just gotta do it. And like I appreciate that time I had. And also it did like malform shit for me. Like in all honesty, like I started to engage with poetry differently.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, my homie Elijah Pryor, who's a phenomenal old black gay poet in Philadelphia.
Period.
He was like, "You're one of the most selfish writers I know." I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. I don't give a fuck about anybody. Like I'm writing for what I need to get out, and I'm just sharing it with people."
Right.
And like when my writing started to change and transition, it wasn't necessarily lending itself to being in slam spaces. It wasn't necessarily lending itself to performing in the ways I traditionally performed. And it's like, shit, like I don't know what to do with that, because if you're booking me for what you've seen from me.
Right.
You're not necessarily booking me for who I'm about to become.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it created just like a fatigue in me, whereas like I don't really want to engage with like the public shit like that anymore. And it's part of why I don't perform as often, because it's like I have to make sure that I am in the right space emotionally to do the thing, because like doing it for my livelihood and just like Philly has a very robust poetry community. Yeah. Right? But not all these niggas is healthy, despite what they may tell you. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you add survivability to some of these janky relationships, to like also just like the emotional demand of having a creative medium that hinges on vulnerability. Right. It can just be very overwhelming in a way that like it's really hard to bounce back from sometimes, you know what I'm saying? And also, I don't regret none of that shit. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because I wouldn't write the things that I'm writing right now. And I also probably wouldn't be program director, right? Like I feel like I had to go through the thing and reach a point where I got fed up with it to make a pivot that was more aligned with my purpose that I wasn't even planning on doing in the first place.
Come on now. Yeah. That is, I appreciate you naming that, because you are somebody who, like, you live in your purpose, but also it's not just one singular aspect to how you function, right? Like you still have the talent of writing and storytelling, which I think easily just like transitions into one. Well, before we get into like your manga and everything, it makes me think around like definitely before we get there, let's talk around like where your love of writing and where that actually developed. Where did that come from first?
So ironically, I used to draw. That was like my thing. And I used to like get computer paper and staple it together and like make comic books. And this was like, I would say I probably started drawing like dumb early, like kindergarten. Yeah. And I was doing this all the way up to 8th grade and like really doing it. Like I hyper focus probably because I'm on the spectrum. So it's like, if I'm about to do anything, I'm about to like,
I'm gonna be the best.
Do it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then in 8th grade, Miss Rado's English class, I remember her. Hopefully she's still alive. She did not have a chin though. It used to bother me, but that's separate. My fault. I'll just be like stream of consciousness. No, she was white though. But yeah. But she had us do a mandatory chapbook project. So everyone in class had to make a chapbook.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, I had never wrote poetry in my life. Yeah. And we didn't even really have like a poetry unit for real. So I really wasn't reading no poets. Like that shit was not on my radar.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm gonna just write about what I know. Like I'm gonna write about my neighborhood. I'm gonna write about my family. I'm gonna write about me. And then we had a peer review day where we had to pass our poetry book around to different classmates. Yeah. And this was around the time where like I grew up feeling just like very invisible for a multitude of reasons. Like between my family viewing me as like the reincarnation of my great grandfather and like all the things attached to like being a grieving tool because I was born like 2 weeks after he died, to just like, you know, having a young mom, right? Like trying to do the best that she can, but there are also learning curves, you know what I'm saying? And there were just a lot of ways in which like I didn't feel like my voice was prioritized. And then like I had, you know, CSA experiences and things like that as well. And so having this peer review and seeing like my classmates respond, and mind you, like in middle school, I ain't have no friends for real. Like I had like 2 homies and one of them would be flipping sides. Yeah. So depending on the day, he might not have been my homie. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I was fighting and all these things. But like when they was reading my poetry, they was like, yo, you fucking spitting. Yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, this nigga don't even like me. Right. And he like complimenting this. Yeah. And so then one day I come late to class and my classmates had entered me into a school poetry slam. And I ended up winning. Wow. And like for me, I didn't even care about like the winning aspect or none of that. It was the fact that people was listening to me.
Yeah, they're seeing
and you. I was like, yo, I ain't never been listened or felt listened to like prior to this moment. And so from there I was like, yeah, I'm a write. Like fuck drawing. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a write.
Which is funny as you like lean into manga.
I know,
like
right. Like, so then from there I like got a notebook, and a lot of the times I was keeping it to myself. I started like branching into rapping, and I had like, I would say I had a rap career from like probably like 10th grade year to 10th grade year was what, 2005 maybe to 2016. Like I helped pay for my grandfather's funeral with album money. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Wow. Or grandmother's funeral, excuse me. Right. But fast forward, you know, doing music, all those things. In college, I was part of like a poetry organization. All of these things, like I've always considered myself a writer, so everything I'm doing is just like honing my pen. Like rap was just the medium I was choosing. Right. I meet Christopher KP Brown my year after I graduate because we featured in the same show. And he asked me to come up to Philly to perform at his event, Pecola Bree Love and the Freedom Party. Which was a phenomenal event. It's not around anymore, but if you don't know KP, definitely check out Christopher KP Brown. And that was like my first paid feature, like ever. And that like started me coming up to Philly regularly. I'm still living in Wilmington at the time. And like when I first started coming up here, I was just like doing acapellas and some poems that I had. And then Kerwin Sutherland, another great poet in Philly who's also a good friend, he was like, you should slam. And I'm like, oh shit, sure, I'll try it out. Like I don't know anything, you know what I'm saying? So I run the gambit of like featuring at all the events in Philly. I started slamming, and while all of this is happening, I am sleeping on my homie's couch. Yeah, like the year of 2017, because I had an apartment with like the homies I was rapping with. We all started going in different directions, and so we was just like, yeah, we're not gonna renew the lease. We drastically underestimated how difficult it would be to find a new place to live. Dog. Yeah. The ghetto. And so all three of us, and these are like they're like 2 of my closest homies who also happen to be twin brothers. We all ended up unhoused at the same time. Wow. Right. Yeah. So like they were working truck jobs at the time, sleeping in their trucks, and I was sleeping on my homie's couch. But while all of that is happening, I'm coming to Philly and like winning at slams repeatedly, right? So fast forward to the top of 2017, a good homie of mine, Justin Graham, he dies in his sleep from, I believe it was diabetes. My partner at the time broke up with me on the last day of our vacation, right? It's all coming to a head.
Oh my gosh.
And this is all happening while I'm unhoused, right?
Yeah.
And also, this is when 13 Reasons Why came out.
Oh,
Should not have been watching that show.
no, not at all.
No,
Like, this is my 13th reason.
Yeah. So I'm like, also because we didn't have the apartment no more, that's where our studio was.
Right.
So I wasn't able to record music anymore
Right.
either, right? So I strictly was just doing poems.
Yeah.
And, I have depression, all of these things. And so it was just like coming to a boil for me. And I was like, yo, I'm trying to check. I'm trying to be out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And went into the kitchen. Trigger warning, by the way. Got a knife. And then my sister called me, right? I didn't tell her about none of this. She didn't know any of this shit was happening. And we just talked on the phone, right? So after we talked, I'm like, all right, I can't be this down bad.
Yeah.
So I started reading The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. And chapter 4 is the law of least effort, which basically says, like, if you put energy into something you aren't purposed to do, you're essentially moving against the universe. And while you may make progress, you'll never make as much progress as if you move with the universe. Next week, I win Philadelphia Fuse Grand Slam champion, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm making money off of poetry. I'm getting booked. I'm winning slams. This is clearly where I'm supposed to be directing my energy. And so then I transitioned and I was like, yo, I'm done with music. I'm just about to be a poet. Moved to Philly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then ever since then, I kind of engage with poetry like martial arts, where it's like I just try to learn as many different forms as I can and just like build my toolkit to like now the collection that I have coming out soon called I Was Close is just like really concise, really potent work about my relationship with my body and like the importance of that specifically as like a male identifying person. Yeah, that was a long answer, but
I thank you. Thank you so much for like telling all of that story, because I think it just like colors the person that you are today, but it also gives more light to one, how you engage with your art, but also thinking around like there's so much of a story behind what you do too. And so don't apologize. I'm a long-winded nigga myself. You're all good. Okay?
Word.
Yeah. And so something I'm thinking around, like as you are talking around like your journey with poetry and rap and just the use of your words, you're also like a huge nerd, y'all.
I'm a huge nerd.
Yeah, but it's funny. More recently, I've been falling back in love with anime, and it has honestly been my escape again. And so, like, I was like, I loved this as a kid, and for me, this past year, I'm just like, there's been so much change, and so I've been trying to figure out, like, all right, what did I love as a kid that makes sense to me, that will still bring me joy, and it's going back to like reading fiction again. But then also, like, I'm sitting down, I'm like, oh, I need to watch some anime, and like, I would sit there for hours, and it's like, in a world that is ever changing, people need things from me, people are depending on me. There's a time where I turn on, and I always got to be subbed. Unless I'm at work, then I gotta watch a dub.
Because them dub actors sound horrible.
Okay, talk about it.
They trash.
However, if I'm at work and I have to multitask, then I have to like listen to dub. That's the only time.
That's valid.
But I like watching it subbed because I put my phone away and I'm just only reading and keeping up with what.
And that should be emotional.
Yo,
them niggas be speaking with conviction.
Oh my God,
Nani?
Like, that's Sakura-chan. What are you doing? Like what? But what is the role? Like for me, I see it as an escape, but it's also like even like as little as Naruto, right? Like shaped how like I look at life and like how I look at friendship and like also when I was thinking about it the other day, I said, oh, this is why it's very hard for me to give up on friendship, because honestly, if Naruto is going that hard for Sasuke and still sees humanity in him, bro, it don't make no sense. Okay,
on the knees in the snow,
begging. Come on, like what?
Yeah,
but I realized like there's been like so many important stories that for me have impacted the way that I approach life, and also just think around like this is what purpose could look like, and this is what purpose can be when you stay on what you want to do, right? And also I like, you know, some of like the psychological thriller things. I know he's personally not a fan, but I'm a Death Note stan. Now I know it's like
that's all right. I respect your opinion.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I love that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, don't be shady. Death Note?
You don't like Death Note?
No. Why would I like watching a nigga eat potato chips and fucking Matrix speed time.
Okay. Not too much. Okay, that was like
2
my
scenes.
bad. And now I'm gonna eat this chip.
I didn't find the concept to be that intriguing because what I care most about in Death Note were the Shinigami, and they serve very little purpose. They have very little exploration of the culture. It's similar to the Saiyans in Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
Saiyans are the most interesting thing about Dragon Ball Z and also the least fleshed out, which like is not a knock to Akira Toriyama because I also understand he ain't really have no intention on making Dragon Ball Z. It was all like, I'm gonna piece this shit together. But that's essentially like how I feel about Death Note. Like I don't care about these whiny ass kids trying to like figure out how to clap each other, right? Like I care about the group of niggas who gave them power. You know, and that's more interesting to me. And there was no real like trade-off. You know what I'm saying? There was no real like even purpose that the Shinigami had in like doing this thing.
It's really just a support role at best.
Yeah.
And even then, like some support characters have more fleshing out than
which made it feel like this prominent group of people is a plot device.
Yeah.
And that doesn't appeal to me.
That's valid though.
Yeah.
I like this. I like the ethical battle. Like, should this one man have all this power? What does this mean? What is actual justice? Like, are you a hero or are you actually a villain? Like, who are you to like play God? Right? So that's the space that I always appreciated from of just like, oh, this is an interesting ethical battle. But that's a long-winded approach to also ask you like, one, what's your relationship to anime and how has it served a space in your life as well?
So this is a side note that is going to tie into my answer.
Energy.
I recently had a show that was really dope. Shout out to Thundercat, who is a really phenomenal poet in Lancaster, PA. Lancaster, I believe.
You're definitely not from here. It's Lancaster.
My fault. But that's the one that's like 2 hours away, right?
Oh, no.
No, there's not Lancaster. There's not Lancaster.
Is it going?
Where the Amish folk at?
Lancaster.
Oh, okay. Well, it feels like 2 hours.
Well, it might be 2 hours if you're driving, but it's only like
driving, from Mount Airy.
Yeah.
Okay, but shout out to Thundercat. She did a show called Men Have Feelings Too, that me, Jovan McCoy, T Sleeveless, Lindo Yes, Mello Jones. It was a stacked list, of poets. And I was kind of just having like a moment, because I was a closer watching everybody perform. And just feeling like, damn, I am really different than everybody. And I don't mean that in like any type of connotative way. Like, oh, I'm different, better, or different, worse, right?
Yeah, I'm different.
Yeah, it's just like objective. It's like objective different.
No, I'm just different.
Yeah, like it's objective different. You know what I'm saying? Because I think all of them are talented in their own specific ways. And I think also all of them perform in a way that I don't. Like, I don't even memorize. Right.
You better stop playing with me. You said I'm gonna take hold. Stop playing with me.
Yeah. Like I just read because I want you to pay attention to the words, right? And like I think my voice does its own thing anyway. All that to say, like, after that show, I talked to my therapist about just like feeling weird about that. And it's not something I ever felt weird about before, right? And she was like, well, maybe you need to reassess like the reason that you choose to perform, right? Like, what's your purpose behind doing it? And that led me down to like rewriting my whole mission statement and my artistic bio and everything. Say all that to say, what I realized is that I care a lot about the human experience, and that is like my focal point, and that is also what anime does for me. Right? It gives me a way to engage with the human experience that is futurist, that is creative, that is not rooted in all of the ways that are equally as valuable that I can engage with it just like in day-to-day relationship building. Like, I don't always want to get information by way of like engaging with somebody. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I just want to ruminate on some shit in the solitude of my room.
Oh, you sound,
and like,
me.
And anime provides me that I get to watch all of these relationships get fleshed out in very nuanced ways that I feel like a lot of American writing doesn't make room for.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Especially like when we're talking like fictional action-oriented things like superheroes and all of those things. Like, there's not as much gray area in the visual content as like would be like in a comic book sometimes, right? And I just feel like anime creators and writers are like really good at that.
I agree.
You know, and so yeah, it serves that purpose of like continuing to inform my human experience while also like allowing me to engage with shit I thoroughly enjoy, like martial arts. I mean, I practice Muay Thai. Like like I love
does this at 6
like
o'clock on a regular.
like I love all those things, and so it's like, damn, I get to like learn about people and like watch niggas fight. Fire. yeah. Like, let's go.
So, yo, you're a manga writer.
Yes.
Like, and so like talk around like you building out that world, and like even where did that. Yeah, let's talk about building out your world, because I just know you're going to just tell the story. Dog, I'm so excited for y'all to hear.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm an avid consumer of anime, manga. I watch more anime than like regular human TV, like with real live action people is what I mean. Because I'm like, it's all human. Yeah. And like I think I've always wanted to make my own thing. Like that urge I had as a child to like have my own genre didn't really go away. I just found something that fed me like in a more fulfilling manner. And so I have like so many concepts that are fleshed out on my Google Drive, but I could never like land on one.
Right.
And so in like 2019, I was like, all right, whatever genre I do next, like it gotta be the one I stick with. Right. So, and this is probably like more of me being on the spectrum. I'm like, well, I need to do research on how to stick with a concept. Yeah. Because clearly I don't know. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I started doing like, I went down a rabbit hole of just like watching creators that I enjoy, and like other people who are established, just like talking about their process of creating like their own works. And one of the things that really stuck with me is like, you have to build the world before you build the characters. Because if you build the characters first, then your story and your world will only be as interesting as your characters are. But if you build a world and then place your characters inside of it, then you'll always have a story that can self-sustain, because the characters will drive the thing, but you won't have to depend on them to be interesting, so to speak. So I started building out this world of Immortal Dark, which takes place on this continent called Jura, and it's broken into like 7 different countries, all of like varying cultures, but also all black people. Excuse me. And
you're human.
That's about to be the new response when people burp. It's like, you human. And so then it was like, okay, they were also talking about, don't necessarily write the story that you want to see, write the story that you care about. Yeah. And so I went through and just like took inventory of like what are like the through lines in all of my writing, like regardless of what it is, because whatever that is, that's probably what the through line of the manga should be, right? Because it's just another extension of my writing. And mental health and like generational trauma was just like reoccurring things. So I'm like, all right, whatever I come up with has to be like rooted in that. So once I built the world in terms of like coming up with, I like drew a continent on my iPad and like colored it in and like made the different lands, and then I like wrote descriptions for like the different cultures. And then I was like, okay, what culture do I want the main character to be a part of, right? I decided that. Then I went into like studying what's called like semiotics. And semiotics is basically studying the way in which symbols and imagery give off certain concepts and ideas of a character. Yeah. Right. I love that. And so like in the studies, they were talking about all your characters, if they're well designed, should have like 2 to 3 like defining like things about them that also say something about like who they are or their story or background and so on and so forth. Like one of the like go-to examples is like Superman's S, right? As it's like the normal S like for Superman, but it's also like a symbol from Krypton, which means like hope. And so there's like the iconography of that is easily identifiable, but then it also has a tie to like his backstory, so on and so forth. So I started like thinking about characters in that way, and I like wrote out the descriptions, and then I like rough sketched them. And so the story essentially follows Nico Savage, who had a sibling, River, who's an older sister, and they were born to one of the greatest martial artists of that time. The popular sport in this world is the Immortal Fighting Coalition, which is basically like UFC with like niggas with powers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And their father was like, he was just that nigga, right? But also like training them to be able to at some point in time be better than him. And there's a reason for that, but like I can't give it away because that will tell too much of the story. And essentially they decide like they hate this nigga, right? Because obviously that doesn't lead to like a healthy household, right? Like I'm raising my kids to be able to beat my ass, like that's horrible. And so they make a pact that they're going to kill him together. And River, the sister, finds out why he was doing these things and decides that she's going to kill him on her own.
Wow.
Nico finds out about this, and so he returns home, and now his goal is to get vengeance on his sister because ultimately, with his father gone, he now has nothing to do with all that grief.
Right. And like what happens with grief unchecked and with nowhere to go.
Yeah. And
I love this.
I didn't realize this when I was coming up with it, but like my editor, Tommy Horsey, who's also like one of my really good friends, he pointed it out to me of like, I was raised predominantly by my great grandmother. Like that's who I lived with. My mom was definitely like in my life or over the house regularly. You know what I'm saying? But I lived with my great grandmother.
It's crazy. You was raised by your great grandmother?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was born, she was like 70.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Makes sense,
Yeah. And like I was born 2 weeks after her husband died. Right. So like there's a lot of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And she was not that great of a person. Like, just being honest. My family will probably debate me about this, and I don't care. They got different lived experience than me. But, like, the version I lived with was not that great of a person. And, like, once the dementia kicked in, like, full force, it was horrible. You know what I'm saying? Like, to the point where my mom and sister moved in with us, and my mom had cancer at the time. And, like, my granny would just be talking to her crazy, right? And, like, part of her tumor growth was related to stress, right? So she was literally killing my mom, right? And when we put her in hospice, she apologized to my mom and my sister, but I never got mine, right?
Which connects.
Yeah. So after she died, it's like, well, what do
you do with this?
Yeah, how do I process this? Because the person who I need accountability from is no longer present. And it's the same for Nico, right? Where it's like he had this upbringing that was very detrimental to him. And the only way he had understood how to like rectify that was to take that nigga's life.
Yeah.
But then he didn't even get to do that.
Right.
And now it's like, where do I go?
Right.
And I originally like got this idea from my hero because essentially that whole story is about All Might, but All Might is not the main character. And so like taking this idea of like the driving force for the story can be somebody that isn't in the spotlight or like even present.
So what happens when you take on somebody else's what happens when somebody else's stories and actions trying to drive you? And like, dog, I love shit like that. That's so good.
And I mean like that's essentially like I feel like how we all live to some degree, right?
It's
like
tradition.
Yeah,
it's peer pressure
tradition.
From dead people.
Yes, exactly, right? Like do this because our family has always done this, or do this because this is what black men do, or you know, so on and so forth. There are all these ways in which our narrative is informed by shit that was outside of us that we wasn't even present for.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so like the story of the manga is exploring like, just how do you deal with that shit?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That. And also not be like harmful to yourself.
Right.
Or other people.
Yeah. And like, how does that exist? I love how, like, for me, I'm always like a fan of artists who are able to be able to take their personal story and again, you led with emotions and the story you cared about, and you were able to put it into a space where like, oh no, let's actually imagine this world.
Yeah.
And so like, I think my last question for you is like, how has that been able to? Did that actually help you in your process in terms of like releasing that kind of like, hey, I have no idea where like this grief or this accountability that I'm seeking for, like, it's no longer there. So did it help in that process?
Yeah, primarily because I also have to write the father.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
And I can't write him in a way that isn't unrealistic or it won't connect. Right. So
you have to humanize him.
Yeah, I have to humanize him, which also meant I had to humanize my granny.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, and while I don't have as much privy to like the things that like led to her being that way, like I at the very least can understand the grief of like losing a husband, right, and then having to take care of this child that everyone believes is like you like that's heavy, right? And I remember a story my mom told me where she was like, the only time she ever even seen my granny cry was like behind closed doors after my grandfather died, where she was just like, you know, like, why would you do this to me?
Which is so fascinating because oftentimes it's like, for us as men, the only time we're allowed to cry is an extreme emotion of either intense grief or at your wedding. You cry at a funeral or wedding. Like, you don't get that in between space. And it's justified.
It definitely like helped me, and I think provided me a avenue of creativity that didn't require me to process some shit. Poetry requires me to process. Like I feel, at least the poetry I write, I would be doing a disservice in sharing it if I'm not intentionally thinking about who I am and where this is coming from. Right. And with the manga, while like I am still a part of it, it's removed from me because it's like other people. Right. And so like the processing of it, you can see it in like the writing and how I'm developing the characters, but you would never, like, if I don't tell you directly, you would never know, right? You would just think I made this shit up, You know what I'm saying? And so there's like a weightlessness with that I don't necessarily like it more than poetry. It's just different, and I appreciate it for that. It's definitely helped me process a lot, for sure.
I appreciate you,
For sure.
Absolutely. Like, thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for rapping with me. And telling your story, because I think it's a powerful one. I think it's one that so many can relate to. And also, like, I think there's such a beautiful connection with the use of words and the use of anime and the use of art that allows us to explore in a way that it gives us permission to do so. Sometimes it's difficult to be like, all right, Daniel, can you give me space so I can cry and do all this stuff, right? But sometimes anime, at least for me, has helped me make sense of the world in some spaces, and also helped me escape from that same world at the same time. And so I think it has like such a powerful thing, but I don't think sometimes we realize, or I don't think people are always able to articulate the value of fantasy and cartoons and escaping through these moments, especially for us as Black men, as Black boys who are engaging in this medium too. So I love everything that you had to say, and I'm so hype around you like building out this fucking world too. I told you, I'm such a fan of your work, bro.
I appreciate it, man. I'm a fan of yours as well.
I appreciate
you. Doing quality work.
We out here, we doing
it.
Yeah. Dog, before you head out, is there anything you want to just impart to the audience before?
Shit.
Shit.
That's like my old fucking countryside coming out.
Okay.
My family is originally from Cape Charles, Virginia, so it's like,
oh wow,
I ain't live there, thank God. But
you
like,
just was raised with some southern tendencies.
I was raised with some southern tendencies, that's drawing out your cuss words.
Yep.
And for some reason, that is not a cuss word to people.
That part.
Okay, I'm imparting as in like a gem, right?
Yeah. What gem do you want to leave with the people?
Okay. Everything, life experiences, people you engage with, how they do or don't treat you, what you do or don't want, all of that shit is just information. It's not good or bad. It's just information.
I love
and the faster you're able to remove judgment from these scenarios and just look at them as information, and that's not saying don't feel. You have to feel, because that's a part of the lived experience. Just don't stew, right? The faster you will be able to make quality decisions that keep you aligned with your purpose. For example, if you have a partner, because I feel like this happens a lot in relationships. And that partner is not functioning in the way you need them to function, even though you have articulated it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make them a bad person.
Right.
Also doesn't necessarily make them a bad partner.
Right.
But what is that information telling you?
Right.
And then now, how do you disassociate from your desired outcome to get the outcome that is desired for you by the thing that is above us?
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my gem.
That is fire. Dog, on that note, let the people know where they can find you, and then I'll close out from there. Yeah.
You can find me on all social media at Enoch the Poet. That's Enoch the Poet, like the nigga from the Bible. And you can follow the manga at Immortal Dark Manga on all things as well. All the words are spelled like the regular way because I don't be feeling like playing with niggas, and like people be having dyslexia. Like I ain't trying to have all these extra things. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Check out my poetry book that's coming out called I Was Close. Release date pending. And also chapter 3 of Immortal Dark is about to be done illustration. We got 4 pages left to illustrate. And so that should be out within the next couple months. So yeah, follow me, keep up to date. And, you know, be healthy to yourself.
You already know what it is. Dog, thank you so much. I'll make sure to leave all of your information.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, dog. Yeah. Like, it ain't going to be the last time either. Like, I'm excited to come back and delve into some even more conversation, because we didn't even get into, like, what it means to, like, build out an actual manga in itself and like all that, and like the process. When you told me the process, I said, dog, it's this expensive. You gotta do this, you gotta do this. So like that process, I'm excited for us to be able to get some of that on the back end as well. But dog, thank you once again for coming on the show. I appreciate you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your story. I see you. I appreciate you. I value you. You are awesome. Thank you so much for keeping it a being with me today.
Thank you, bro.
Y'all, make sure you tap in with the podcast. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a rate and review wherever you're listening to this show. Please make sure you use the hashtag KIAB or keeping it a being, and when you're in the Twitter streets. I appreciate y'all. You know, I'm a man of the Twitter streets. I be out there.
No one calls it X.
Okay,
you might as well not change the name.
What's your mama name you?
Exactly.
Twitter. I ain't calling you by that bullshit. Whatever your little friends are calling you, I ain't calling you that.
It really look like a porn app now.
It does. I'm just like, where's the last 2 X's, bro? It's like, stop playing. Like, y'all bugging.
That's it, you know.
All right.
Rich white man.
Oh, just do nothing. It's nonsensical. Anyways, we will see y'all next time. Peace.